welcome. Welcome to the first breakout room of your CleoCon journey, right? Yay! I got excited when I saw the Cleons running in earlier today. My name is Kara Hardin. I am CEO and founder of the Practice Lab, a mental health training and education company that specializes in high performance and achievement. I'm also a registered psychotherapist and, surprise, a former practicing lawyer. Could you tell by my heels? I believe the future of the legal industry is deeply human and fun, and that the key to unlocking the next level of development and progress is our mental health. And I have so much hope as to how that's going to happen. Let me take the next 20 minutes of your time and tell you what I mean. Like any good former lawyer, I'm going to do this in two parts. We're scaffolding together. First, we're going to get clear on concepts. I want you to leave here with a working applicable knowledge so that when you're reading the headlines and you see mental health, boo, 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 mental health, blah, blah, blah. You have an applicable, tactile, translatable concept that comes to your brain. And with that context, I want us to look at law and the legal industry and just ask, frankly, how are we doing? From there, I want to spend the rest of our time navigating the question I get the most often, both as a psychotherapist and as a consultant. What do I do, Kara? I believe in this. I want to help myself. I want to help my teams. I want to help my law firm. What do I do? I told you about who I was professionally. I'd like to introduce myself again so that I can tell you about the parts of me that show up to work. I'm a mom, 2.5 and 5.5. Anyone else enjoying a quiet hotel room? Yes, all the parents were like, it's so quiet. Right? I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend. I'm also a cisgender, white, heterosexual woman. I am a settler on the land where I live and work. I'm Jewish. Shana Tova Umituka, happy and healthy New Year to all of you. May you all have sweetness in the year ahead. Why is this integral to the work of bringing mental health to firms? All of these parts of us show up at work, and while I'm standing here in front of you as kind of an expert on how and why people do the wonderful, the awesome, the strange, the sometimes really weird, painful things that people do, I don't know you. I don't know what brought you here. I don't know what you're interested in. And if we're taking mental health seriously, the first thing, the top priority we need to do is honor one another's dignity. So in this room, we are all experts. In fact, your expertise outweighs mine. You are the expert on you. Tell me, mental health, popcorn style. When I say mental health, you think what? Healthy balance. What else? Anxiety. Self-care. Joy. Ooh, I like that one. I mean, I like all of them, but joy's fun. What else? You see the story in the news. Legal industry struggling with mental health. What are the things? What are the words that come to your head? Burnout? What was that? Something funny. Zoloft. Substance abuse, substance use. Trauma. Hope you're all going to see Myrna McCollum later today. Trauma. Yeah, complicated, right? What we're hearing here is we all know, like, mental health is more than just the absence of symptoms of mental illness, right? It's more than that. Corey Keyes defines mental health as our social, emotional, and psychological well-being. Right? So things like satisfaction in life, interest, mastery, autonomy, self-acceptance. Do we feel like we belong? And the communities that we do feel like we belong, do we like where they're going? Do we like their values? Are they actualized, to use a really grad school term? You know, I'm going to say something controversial. This would be like a clutch your pearls moment. You can hold your chairs if you need to. I think mental health is bad branding. I just do. Because any one of you who has handled a divorce case and dealt with someone looking in their eye being like, I don't know if you're going to get to see your children. Any one of you who's handled a human rights file, who has had to call a lawyer in the middle of the night and say, I know you were sleeping, you have to work, or who has to be that lawyer who has to work, you know that the grief, the loss, the euphoria, the joy, that's not something I'm making up just for fun in my head. Mental health is not something that exists only between our ears. It is something that's in our bodies, in our hearts, and in our souls. Right? We don't just bring our mental health to work with us the way I bring my coffee. Hey, I got my mental health with me today. I got my health, right? Our mental health impacts every email we send, every client connection call we make, every conference we go to, the conferences we choose to attend. And it's impacted by those choices. So let's be really tactical. When I say mental health, when I say health, I'm just going to say health. I want you to think of glasses. Stay with me. I want you to think of lenses that you put on over your eyes that impact how clearly you see, that impact what you see and what you interact with. Your mental health and the mental health of others impacts what you perceive, that is what you pick up in the world around you, how you understand and interpret it, and then how you interact with it. It's pervasive. It's everywhere. So when you're reading those headlines, I want you to think of health. I want you to think of lenses, the way you would put them on. Are they clean? Are they dirty? If you're like me, you're losing your glasses everywhere. You've had to resort to contacts. Right? And what is the state of our individual and collective mental health in law? It is profoundly funky. There is something extremely funky going on. We are like this sad cat that needs a towel and a hug. Right? I see four significant challenges, cross-industry, cross-size of firm, cross-discipline of law, cross-function, around our mental health, those glasses that we're wearing. The first is overwork. How many of you heard Jack just now say that billable hours in the last year were up 35%? You know what wasn't up? The number of hours in the day. That stayed the same, right? So we're working really hard. At the same time, because we're working so hard, we're struggling with feelings of needing to get it right. There's very little time to do it. You got to get it right the first time. And you know what we're not good at doing is being perfect because we're human. It's actually not possible. And then we feel like we're not enough. It results to a feeling of being alone and being isolated in what we do. We don't feel seen and we don't feel like we matter. And then, because you're so busy doing all the other things, you feel completely disconnected. I have a hypothesis I would like to float with all of you. I believe that people make sense. And what I mean by that is, if there are challenges in our industry, it's not because people are doing things wrong. I think we're doing our best and somehow along the way, incrementally, how we learned to succeed, the very qualities that help us do our jobs well, they overextended. And now they're the exact things that are leading us to feel unwell. Let's take it apart. Overwork. The quantity of work that we're doing. Remember when commuting was just fun? Maybe not. Maybe that was never a thing in your world. But there was a time when you didn't feel divided. You were commuting. I'm from Toronto, so I was on the TTC. There's never reliable Wi-Fi there. It's a great thing, actually, because I can't work when I'm doing that. Now, we're filling that time, feeling guilty. We're not doing the things we have to do. It's divided all of a sudden. There is not enough time to do all the things on our to-do list anymore. We work harder, we work smarter, we work longer. There's no agility. There's no level of agileness that will actually get our to-do list done. How could we not be anxious? Perfectionism. You see, it's not just that we want to get all the work done. We want to do it really well. I've never actually met someone. I've tried on a number of times to be this type of person that says, you know what? I'm okay sucking today. I am. I'm okay just going, I'm gonna phone it in, and I'm not gonna try, and when my colleague asks for help, I'm gonna pretend not to hear them. We want to do well. And with more and more things coming, the momentum picks up and we have one chance to do it well. You know, in the course of the pandemic, I'm gonna tell you something kind of embarrassing. Cleaning in my house became something that happened very irregularly, like extremely irregularly, to the point where probably 6 months in, I was like cleaning my home, and I had this thought, like, I'm not gonna do this again. So I have to do this really well. Cut to, it's a Thursday night, midnight, and I am sweeping under my stove, right? Because I just wanted to get it right, and I was only gonna do it once because I cared. There was nothing wrong with me. I'm just a limited resource. And then we feel isolated. The number one thing I have heard, the number one over the last 2.5 years, is, hey, Kara, I know I need a break, but I can't take one because if I do, my colleagues will drown. I can't do this. And so what we do is we take it on and we do the work and we add more things to our plate. And the result is that our scope gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and no one really knows all the things we're doing. Under that mountain of work and more time, we feel disconnected. What's the point? What matters? So we're irritable and exhausted. This is how we're showing up to work. We're irritable and we're exhausted. This is what it looks like on the ground in some of your lives. People asking, is this all there is? Is this what I signed up for when I entered the legal industry? Or I can't unplug. I need to be available to help. I don't have a second to myself. I can't make a mistake. And if I don't have time to tell anyone, I don't even know who I could tell. Here's the funky part. I think people are struggling because we care. Because we know how to be successful. And I don't want to look at you and say, stop being successful. That's silly. I want you to keep caring. I want you to keep doing and finding work that's meaningful to you, just not at the expense of your mental health. We have all misplaced our glasses, right? Something like a third of legal professionals say that they're depressed. 2/3 struggle with anxiety. How could they not? There is more things to do than there are time in the day, and they want to do it right. When it comes again to being seen and mattering, 61% of Black lawyers feel isolated. If anyone in the audience has a stat on Indigenous lawyers and Indigenous research or Indigenous legal professionals, please let me know. Indigenous invisibility is real. I couldn't even find research on it. The funkiness continues with the status health paradox because it turns out that the more prestigious your law job, the worse your health outcomes. Something strange is happening. And yet I believe and started off by telling you that I have an incredible amount of hope and I want to get tactile now about what we do. So what does support look like? Everyone always wants to know, how do I change the world? And I love that attitude. I'm here for it. So I'm going to start with some big ideas, some big systems-based things. And remember, because you're the expert on you and you're coming with your own questions and problems, I've tried to individualize it a little bit, but this is a great time. I've saved lots of time at the end for questions after too. We're going to go systems, and then we're going to go individuals. If you are seeing a population of colleagues, or if you yourself, if at your firm, the biggest pain point is this all there is? That sense of inefficacy, of lack of purpose. Hearken our keynote. And remember that people are driven by bigger dreams and bigger visions. I encourage you to go back to your firm's mission statement and values. What are you saying matters? What are you saying is important at your firm? And then, what are the behaviors that underlie those values? If you tell me that you value integrity, best believe I will be taking vacation time. Best believe I will be looking for a good new parent policy. I will be looking for support for counseling. If you tell me that I matter and my integrity matters, you're going to be saying please and thank you and helping clean up after meetings. So don't just aspirationalize cool values. Behaviorize, is that a word? Put behaviors behind. The things that you say matter. I recommend doing it as a group and brainstorming rules. Every idea is awesome. Yes, and at the end, then you talk about how to enforce it. But in the beginning, just invite everyone to the table and ask, what about, I need to be available to help, and I have no time? Here is where norms around, I'm going to go for it, email in particular, can be extremely impactful. On an individual level, I'm going to get to this, just send fewer. Don't mind dump. Don't mind dump in an email to your colleagues. They don't want to receive that email, you don't really want to write that email. But how do we step away from this automated to-do list? How do we create meaningful systems-based norms? Clio actually has excellent integration with Microsoft Teams. The leading thinker on this is Cal Newport. He has a book called A World Without Email. He talks about how you need to project manage asynchronously. So you're going to hold all of your information in one place. And if you have questions, you go to that place, not to a person. That's a big change idea. It stems from the fact that we are all spending our workday in meetings answering emails and then spending our night not doing our hobbies or seeing our loved ones or connecting, but instead doing the actual work we didn't get to do in the daytime. So we need to improve our workflow management systems so that people actually have time to do their work during the day when they're awake naturally, as opposed to at night when they should be sleeping. This idea that we can't make a mistake. You know, I have a friend, he teaches elementary school, and he's actually built in risk-taking into the rubric. So students are rewarded for taking a risk. It's like we've forgotten. We're so used to succeeding, the pain of failing even in our imaginations, is so big that we avoid it. Kim Scott's the author of Radical Candor, and she talks about it in her time at Google. She had like a stuffy, and when people tried big, bold things and failed, it was like a badge of honor on their desk. Look what they tried. You want to be innovative? You have to be willing to try something new. And maybe it fails, but even if it does, you'll gain data. So create a culture, either with a stuffy or by rewarding risk-taking, where people feel like it's okay to be developing, to be imperfect. Now, this idea that we're suffering alone. Remember, we all have glasses, whether we actually have glasses or not. Consider them like a mandatory fashion accessory, right? And so whether we are talking about how we are or not, our health comes to work with us. Here is what every leader should ask every person they connect with before any other question. How are you, really? How are you, really? And then they should stop talking and listen. We don't ask the question oftentimes because we're afraid of the answer. What if they're not good, Kara? What if they're not good? And I got a 9 o'clock that I got to get to, right? Well, one, if they're not good, your 9 o'clock can probably wait. And two, I want you to honor their dignity. It's not your job to be the expert on anyone else. If someone's not good, you get to listen, and just that gets to be helpful. Or you get to ask one of my next favorite questions. It sounds like this is really important. Can we talk about it again later today? Or, have you thought about your own next steps? I bet they have. Have you thought about what you need? How can I support you? We have to stop pretending like we know other people better than they know themselves. That's ridiculous. So how are you really? What does it look like? Kara, this all sounds great, but how does it actually work? Here's the process. And again, remember, we're going big and bold. I was working with a practice group, and it was probably 18 months into the pandemic, and no one had taken a vacation. And remember, billable hours were up 35%. It's really common. So the group leaders called an all hands on deck. Everyone was on Zoom. Everyone was not happy to be on Zoom, but cameras were on. It's a complicated thing with cameras. This is not a statement about that, right? And he said, we have a problem. We have a problem here. People are not taking vacation. And it took about an hour, but they got out their calendars, and they each took 2 weeks, and they decided who was going to cover for who was the backup in case the person who was covering got sick. They took the responsibility and the onus away from the individuals, and they put it into the collective group. Now it's something that they do every year. Everyone gets a month off. And you can look ahead if you have a wedding coming up, a bar mitzvah, a quinceañera, something special that you want to be able to go to. You know you can plan on it and rely on it. We can help one another. Leaders just have to sit down and say, we're prioritizing this. And by the way, the work of belonging often falls on the backs of people who are already overworked and not getting paid. They do it off the side of their desk. And so if you are a leader and you want to take this seriously, take it on yourself or pay someone. These are skills and time and effort that require work. If someone in your organization is on this committee, that committee, it should be compensated. It can be overwhelming. Remember our sad cat. So what do? How do we just grab a towel? Like, how do we just do the things, even for ourselves? Consider core values and community building. Why did you get into the work that you're doing? Why did you come to CleoCon? You're a vanguard, a trendsetter, an innovator, a thought leader. What matters to you? Anchor there. You're not just answering emails, administrating, and herding cats. You're trying to make a difference because it matters to you. If you're struggling taking time off, it means that you have guilt walking away from work. The surest, most effective way I have seen people manage that is by helping someone else take time off. Like really help them guard the time off. And then say to yourself, now it's my turn. Consider if you are someone who struggles to take risks, big, small. How do you talk to yourself about mistakes? When you send the confidential matter to the wrong client, do you spiral? What does that look like in your brain? I want to recommend you take out the book Growth Mindset by Susan Dweck, or you consider engaging with someone, a coach, a therapist. We make sense. We've been taught how to succeed. And so it makes sense that we're going to need some professional help to relearn those ways of success. And if you feel like you can't tell anyone, I believe you. Disclosure can be tricky. Consider if there are people in your life who you trust. You can rely on them. So here we are, with glasses, looking at one another, holding the complexity of the ways in which we try and how, and sometimes, they can leave us feeling anxious, inadequate, lonely, and like, what's the point? I started some 30 minutes ago saying, I have a lot of hope, and I believe deeply that the future of our industry is humane and fun. Why is that? It's because each and every one of you is here right now. We're in the field, out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing. When I started my business 3 years ago, I was never invited to talk about health. I was invited to talk about stress management. And here, at the world's largest legal conference, there is a room full of you, caring, dedicating your time and your effort. Yes, the question of how we do law and stay healthy is a complicated one. And I believe that each of you, together, will help us solve it. You'll tell your friends will tell their friends, and before we know it, this will be at the top of every agenda. And so for coming, for doing something tiny, not just for yourself, but for the industry, I thank you. I thank you for the hope that I have, and I thank you for your attention and your energy. May you all remember your glasses. Be well, everyone. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah. So a good example rewarding risk-taking. I think you'll see a mid-sized law firm, in particular I think of associates, who really have a difficult time. They want everything checked, especially juniors. Is this right? Is this right? Is this right? I would say setting up a culture of that was great, right? A culture of that was great no matter the outcome, right? So when they take a client matter and they run with it, that was great no matter the outcome. Is that specific enough? Yeah, right? Anyone else have any questions? Yeah. Yeah. So the question was, if you're working with a leader or a partner who self-described, quote, not very touchy-feely, sometimes you'll hear, I'm not into the woo-woo. Yeah. But they care? Like they're already on board, or you're trying to make the case? Sure. Right? So I love the question. So sometimes it's helpful to take the learning away from the individual and make it group. Lisa Feldman Barrett has an incredible book called How Emotions Are Made. She's a scientist, and she talks about how emotions are born in our body and then communicated to our brain. Emotions are just concepts. And for people who are rooted in data and science, even just pulling, she did some opinion pieces in the New York Times, even just sharing those, right? It gives you a language of concepts and data that can be really helpful. I also find that sometimes it can be helpful to be in the same room, and after the meeting is over, where they do something that is slightly less helpful to someone feeling good, is to say, hey, I just noticed, and I know we're working on this, I wonder when you did that, what that was about, right? Because people make sense, right? And so feedback can't just be a one-time thing. You have to be willing to offer it up, often, consistently, and with a lot of curiosity and generosity. I'm happy to talk about it more if you need more. I'm committed to ending on time, 10:53. Any other questions? I will stick around in case. Thank you all so much for coming, for listening. I'm so humbled. It was wonderful to have you.